22-year-old mystery solved. The new technology police are using to solve crimes sounds like something straight out of science fiction. Recently, the Texas Department of Public Safety identified the remains of Sylvia Nicole Smith, a 16-year-old girl who had gone missing in 2000. Her ID was made possible through the help of DNA testing nearly a decade after her remains were found in 2013 near an oil field in Midland. Christina Burgess spoke with the chief genetic genealogist, C.C. Moore, about how the process worked.
It's an amazing feeling to be able to help families like this and provide answers.
For the past 4 years, genetic genealogist C.C. Moore has been working alongside law enforcement to help identify missing persons' remains and solve cold cases using a method called genetic genealogy.
We're using a type of DNA that's called autosomal DNA, and we inherit 50% from each of our parents of this type of DNA, about 12.5% from each of our great-grandparents.
Solving crimes starts with a sample of DNA from the victim's remains.
For these cases, we have to start from scratch, and we have to reanalyze the biological material from the beginning. We have to go back to that original biological sample, get that DNA, and reanalyze it using these more advanced techniques.
Once they have the victim's DNA, they can slowly reverse engineer a family tree.
And so when we're working on, say, a Jane Doe case, we're first going to try to identify her ancestors based on who she's sharing DNA with. And then as we move forward in time, we're going to get closer and closer to the present and start looking at those families and saying, is there anybody in this family that we don't see any recent records for, that we don't see a social media account for? And so that's exactly what happened in this recent Texas Rangers case, where we finally got close enough to the family to realize that this woman was missing.
And in this case, this process can be a long one.
But we have some cases that have taken us years. And this recent Texas case was especially challenging because one of the factors that we have to consider when we're working a case is population group. And so because she was African American, we have less representation in the genetic genealogy databases that we're able to access.
Moore's team doesn't use popular databases like 23andMe or Ancestry.com, but the two smallest databases, which is another challenge.
Limited to the two smallest databases used for genetic genealogy, which are called GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA. They both only have about 1.5 million people in them, and there's a lot of overlap.
After the DNA is run through the database, the investigation begins.
Once we have made that determination, we're moving to public record. And so we're really not spending much time with the DNA. It's all about those public records. It's all about that research.
Records like census records, newspaper archives, obituaries, and social media. And digging through all of this gathered information eventually points them to a match.
And so it took a long time in this case to get down to that family. But once we did, we were able to determine that there was a missing daughter. And so as sad and heartbreaking as the resolution is in these cases, it does at least provide answers to the family.